It began as the kind of afternoon people dream about. Warm sunlight, soft breeze, and nothing urgent to do. But even in perfect moments, fate has a way of slipping in uninvited. The sun was high, its golden light spilling over every surface like warm honey. A few lazy clouds drifted above, moving so slowly they might as well have been frozen in the sky. Claire Matthews reclined on a cushioned lounge chair by the edge of her backyard pool, the brim of her wide straw hat casting a delicate shadow over her face. She had kicked off her sandals hours ago, her bare feet resting on the cool tiles, and in one hand she held a tall glass of iced tea beaded with condensation. The ice clinked gently as she lifted it to her lips, the faint sound punctuating the stillness. It wasn't often she had days like this anymore. Between her work as a freelance graphic designer, her volunteer commitments at the community center, and a family that always seemed to need her for something, Claire's schedule was usually stitched tight with obligations. But today was hers alone. No deadlines, no meetings, no obligations except to enjoy the sun and maybe finish the paperback novel lying next to her on the chair. Her backyard was her sanctuary. High cedar fences blocked the view from the street, and the landscaping was just overgrown enough to make it feel like a private resort. The pool water shimmered in rhythmic ripples, occasionally disturbed by the faint breeze. On the far side, a row of potted palms swayed just slightly, their leaves whispering against one another. Somewhere beyond the fence, a neighbor's lawnmower droned softly, but even that mechanical hum seemed gentle today, part of the background lullaby of summer. Claire tilted her head back and closed her eyes. She could feel the sunlight warming her skin, seeping into her muscles, loosening every knot of tension. For a few blissful minutes, she did nothing but breathe, slow, deep breaths, in and out, matching the rhythm of the pool's soft waves against the tiles. She told herself she'd get up soon, maybe take a swim, maybe flip open her book. But for now, she simply existed in the moment. A faint splash broke her daze, not from her pool, but perhaps from somewhere down the block. Kids playing, she thought absently. It was a Saturday, after all, and the neighborhood always came alive in the summer. She imagined the Henderson twins chasing each other with water guns again, or old Mr. Jacobs turning on his garden hose to Mrs. Rowe's bushes. The mental images brought a smile to her lips. Her phone lay on the small wicker side table, screen dark, notification silent. She had decided earlier not to check emails or social media for at least a few hours. It was a self-imposed digital detox, a rare thing for her, but today felt like the right day for it. She wanted to hear the world as it was, without pings, alerts, or reminders pulling her mind somewhere else. She reached for her book, flipping it open to the page she'd dog-eared the night before. It was a slow-burn mystery, the kind where the real danger lurked behind pleasant facades. Claire found herself admiring the author's ability to plant unease without showing a single violent act. A small part of her wondered if life could ever be like that, peaceful on the surface, hiding something darker beneath. She quickly shook the thought away. This was her safe place. Today, there was no reason for shadows. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint scent of freshly cut grass and barbecue smoke. Claire inhaled deeply, the smells weaving together into something familiar and comforting. She could almost taste the grilled corn and hear the sizzle of steaks on someone's patio. She imagined how the evening might go. Maybe she'd pour herself a glass of wine later, sit outside until the stars came out. Yes, that sounded perfect. A faint hum touched her ears then, not the mower this time. Something different. Mechanical, yes, but layered with a kind of rhythmic static. She glanced toward the street, though the fence blocked her view. Probably a work crew with a radio, she thought, maybe fixing a utility line somewhere nearby. The noise wasn't loud enough to be distracting, so she returned to her book, letting the words pull her back in. The next half hour passed in measured comfort. She alternated between reading, sipping her drink, and closing her eyes to simply listen to the whisper of palm leaves, the faint plop of a leaf dropping into the water, the soft buzz of a dragonfly as it hovered over the pool. Time moved lazily, like the day itself didn't want to rush. Claire had almost drifted into a light doze when a shadow passed over her legs. Her eyes fluttered open, and she spotted a stray cloud sliding across the sun, dimming the brightness for just a moment. She adjusted her hat, sat up slightly, and poured the rest of her tea into her mouth, savoring the last bit of melted ice. She made a mental note to refill it soon, maybe with a splash of lemon this time. A neighbor's dog barked sharply, breaking the quiet. Then again, and again. It wasn't unusual for dogs to bark in this area. People walked past the fences all the time. Still, there was something in the dog's tone that didn't sound playful. Claire listened for a moment, then shrugged. It was probably just barking at a squirrel or another dog. She checked the sky again. The sun had slipped a little lower, softening the light into a more golden hue. She thought about taking a dip before it got too late. Her skin was warm enough now that the water's coolness would feel like heaven. Claire swung her legs over the side of the lounge chair and stood, stretching her arms over her head. The movement felt good, a gentle pull along her spine. She took a step toward the pool when the faint static hum reached her ears again, a little clearer this time. This time she could almost make out a voice within it, low, measured, speaking in short bursts. She paused mid-step, tilting her head slightly, trying to catch the words. The voice faded as quickly as it had come. She exhaled a small laugh. "I really need to stop letting my imagination run," she muttered to herself. Whatever it wasn't her concern. She slipped into the water, letting the cool embrace wrap around her body. She floated on her back, eyes closed, letting the sun warm her face while the water supported her weight. From here, the world felt distant, muffled by the gentle lapping against her ears. Every sound was softened, every movement slowed. If she had known how quickly this peace would be shattered, she might have stayed in that water forever. The water cradled Claire in a cool embrace, but even there, she felt the shift. Not a big one, just a subtle change, like the way air feels heavier before rain. She opened her eyes to a sky that was still bright, but the light seemed different somehow, less playful than before. She paddled toward the edge of the pool, gripping the smooth tiles and letting her fingers trail through the water. Somewhere beyond the fence, the dog was still barking. The tone hadn't softened. If anything, it had grown more insistent, like it was warning about something it couldn't see but could sense. Claire rested her chin on her forearm, glancing at the gate on the far side of her yard. It was latched, same as always. She'd been through enough summer days here to know the sounds of the neighborhood. The hum of air conditioners, the distant buzz of a weed trimmer, the occasional squeal of children playing in sprinklers. This was different. A faint breeze drifted through, just strong enough to set the palm leaves swaying again. But it carried with it a smell she didn't recognize. Not unpleasant, just unfamiliar, faintly metallic, mixed with something acrid, like rubber warming in the sun. She wrinkled her nose and glanced toward the street side of the fence, but there was nothing to see. The distant static returned. This time it was joined by a quick, clipped voice, words chopped by the intermittent crackle of a two-way radio. Claire caught a fragment, unit, hold position, before the sound faded again. She blinked, wondering if she'd imagined it. Pulling herself out of the water, she wrapped a towel around her shoulders and padded barefoot to the patio table where her drink sat. She topped off the glass from the pitcher she'd left in the shade, then took a long sip. The ice clinked again, and for a moment, she focused on that small, normal sound, grounding herself in it. Movement caught her attention near the neighbor's yard. Through a small gap between the fence slats, she saw Mrs. Barlow standing rigidly on her porch. The older woman's posture was stiff, her gaze fixed on something down the street. She wasn't watering plants or waving hello or doing any of her usual slow afternoon tasks. She was just standing there. Claire considered calling out, but before she could, Mrs. Barlow stepped back inside and closed her door with deliberate care. A single, faint siren moaned in the distance. Not the urgent wail of an ambulance racing past, but that long, rising tone that felt like it was still far away. Claire listened closely, half expecting it to fade entirely. But it stayed low and steady, maybe even growing louder by degrees. She shook her head, dismissing it. Cities had sirens all the time. Emergencies happened somewhere every day. It didn't mean anything was wrong here. Still, her eyes kept drifting toward the fence as she sat back down in her lounge chair. The book lay untouched on the table. She told herself she'd get back to it in a minute, but instead, she watched the way the sunlight hit the water. The reflections danced, but the rhythm fell off. Faster, more erratic. Maybe it was just the wind. The siren grew clearer, joined now by the muffled squawk of another radio call. The words were still indistinct, but the cadence was unmistakable. The clipped, urgent tone of someone giving instructions. Claire glanced at her phone, briefly tempted to turn it on and check the news, but resisted. She didn't want to be pulled into the world outside her yard. Not yet. Then came the thump. It wasn't loud, but it was close, like a car door shutting firmly. A beat later, another, followed by the crunch of tires over gravel. She sat forward, heart giving a tiny, inexplicable kick. Her mind raced through explanations. Delivery truck? Maybe the mail carrier? But she hadn't ordered anything, and the postal service didn't usually stop on her side of the street this late in the day. The dog barked again, now joined by a second voice from farther down the block. Someone shouted, just a single, sharp word she couldn't make out. The air seemed to still after it, as if the entire street had paused to listen. Claire realized she was gripping the arm of her chair. She forced herself to lean back, to breathe, to remind herself that everything she was hearing probably had nothing to do with her. And yet, she couldn't shake the awareness that something was shifting, some invisible gear clicking into motion. From behind the fence, another faint voice spoke over the radio. This time, she heard it more clearly. Copy en route, stand by. The words were professional measured, but they carried a weight she couldn't ignore. Her drink now sat untouched. The warmth of the afternoon pressed against her skin, but it felt less like comfort and more like a heavy blanket she couldn't escape. Even the breeze had changed. Sharper now, cutting through the heat in brief, restless bursts. She glanced at her house, wondering if she should go inside. The idea felt strangely premature, like she'd be admitting something was wrong before she had proof. So she stayed where she was, eyes fixed on the sliver of street she could see through the fence gap. Minutes passed, each one thick with the sense of waiting for something she couldn't name. Somewhere, the siren's pitch rose again, closer this time, and the static chatter of the radio came with it. Claire exhaled slowly, telling herself it was all just coincidence. After all, this was her perfect afternoon. Nothing could really be wrong, could it? The siren's echo seemed to fade, swallowed by the distance, but the static didn't. It lingered, a soft, persistent hiss in the background that wove itself into the summer air. Claire sat still, eyes drifting to the fence gap again, certain she'd catch a glimpse of whatever was making that sound. Then, faint but unmistakable, a voice pushed through the static. Unit 7, hold position. Await confirmation. The words were clear enough this time that she sat up straighter. She knew that tone, clipped, efficient, and entirely devoid of emotion. It sounded exactly like the police radios she'd heard on news clips or crime shows. Her mind jumped to the simplest explanation. Maybe a patrol car was stopped somewhere nearby, or a utility crew had a security guard with radio. But as she strained to hear, she caught another voice. This one calmer, female, speaking into what she imagined was a headset. Copy that. 7. Status on backup? Claire's fingers tightened around her glass. The voices were too close now to be coincidence. She glanced at her back door, debating whether to go inside, but the air around her felt charged, and she couldn't quite convince herself to break the spell of the moment. Somewhere in a place she couldn't see, gears were turning. A block away, unseen by her, a 911 dispatch center buzzed with quiet urgency. Operators in headsets spoke into microphones, their eyes scanning computer screens, displaying call logs and flashing alerts. Every keystroke, every radio reply was part of an invisible thread weaving through the neighborhood. Back in her yard, Claire adjusted her hat and tried to focus on her book again, but the words blurred. The static rose and fell with the breeze, sometimes fading until she wondered if she'd imagined it, then swelling suddenly as if a door somewhere had opened. She set the book down, listening intently. Unit 4 en route. ETA 3 minutes. Her chest tightened. En route to where? And why? She forced a small laugh, shaking her head. Whatever it was, it had nothing to do with her. People called 911 for all sorts of reasons. Maybe a minor traffic accident. Maybe a noise complaint. But another sound joined the mix now. The low, deliberate rumble of an engine idling. She stood, towels still draped loosely around her shoulders, and moved toward the far corner of the yard. Through the slats in the fence, she caught a flash of white. A vehicle parked just out of full view. The radio crackled again. Confirm address before approach. Claire felt something cold slide into her stomach. It wasn't fear exactly, not yet, but the edges of her comfort were fraying. At the dispatch center, a woman with dark hair and quick hands typed rapidly, repeating the details from a caller into her headset. On another screen, a map showed a blinking icon, narrowing in on a street not far from where Claire sat. A clock in the corner counted seconds, each one pulling the responding units closer. She took a step back from the fence, heart ticking faster than before. Her drink, still half full, sat abandoned on the table now. The dog from earlier barked again, sharp and urgent, as if it too sensed something was about to break the calm. Claire told herself to sit down, to keep her mind from spinning out. She dropped onto the lounge chair, pulling the towel tighter around her. But the moment her body stilled, the voices came sharper again. Advise maintain distance until static, seen as securer. Seen. The word stuck in her mind, heavy and out of place in the context of a sunny afternoon. Scenes were for crime shows, for emergencies, for things you read about later in the paper. Not for quiet backyards with iced tea and paperbacks. She closed her eyes, hoping the sound would fade. Instead, another phrase drifted to her. Notify medical. Stand by for address. Her breath hitched. An address? Here? The radio crackled again, but the rest was swallowed by static. She opened her eyes, the sunlight suddenly feeling too bright, too sharp. Inside the dispatch center, the female operator tapped her pen against the desk, waiting for confirmation from the units in the field. The call log on her screen was still open, the reason for the dispatch marked in simple, blunt text, possible medical emergency. Caller disconnected. Claire shifted in her seat, scanning her yard as if some clue might present itself. Everything looked the same, the pool shimmering, the palms swaying. Yet nothing felt the same. The engine outside revved softly, then settled again. A final burst of static came through, followed by a clear, deliberate voice. Prepare to confirm location. She froze, waiting for the next words. And somewhere beyond the fence, the radio hissed like it was holding its breath. The static swelled again, like a breath being drawn. Claire leaned forward without realizing it, every muscle tense, eyes fixed on the narrow gap in the fence, as though she could pull the words into focus by sheer will. And then they came. Confirm address, 325 Meadow Lane. The syllables seemed to land one by one, heavy and deliberate, as if the air itself carried their weight. Claire blinked, her mind stuttering. It couldn't have been what she thought. She must have misheard. Maybe it was 352 or 328. Numbers blurred easily over a radio, didn't they? She sat back, exhaling through a shaky laugh. Yes, that was it. Just a coincidence. But before the relief could take hold, the voice came again, firmer this time, no static to soften it. Dispatch to all units, confirm, 325 Meadow Lane. Repeat, 325 Meadow Lane. The sound sliced through her like ice water. This time there was no room for doubt. They had said her address. Not close to it. Not something that might be mistaken for it. Hers. Exactly. Her fingers gripped the arms of the chair so tightly her knuckles ached. She glanced around her backyard as though expecting to see something, anything, that would explain it. Smoke, a stranger, a broken window. But everything was as it had been a minute ago. Her heartbeat began to thud in her ears. What could possibly make her address the focus of a 911 dispatch? She was fine. She was alone. There was no emergency here. Or was there? A sharp image flashed into her mind. Her father's old stories about silent dangers. Gas leaks you couldn't smell, structural cracks you couldn't see, people who collapsed without warning. The thought made her skin prickle. She grabbed her phone from the side table, swiping the screen awake. Her hand trembled as she tapped her daughter's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. Hey, it's Mom. Just call me back, okay? Her voice sounded too high, too fast, even her own ears. She ended the call and immediately dialed her neighbor, Mrs. Barlow, who she'd seen earlier. No answer there either. The radio crackled again. Unit 7. Proceed to front entrance. Approach with caution. Claire's breath caught. She could feel her pulse in her throat. Were they coming here right now? She stood quickly, scanning her yard again, the still water, the swaying palms, the neat patio furniture. Everything was the same, yet everything had changed. Beyond her fence, the sound of tires crunching on gravel grew louder. A car door slammed, firm and final. Claire stepped toward the back door of her house, pausing halfway. Should she go inside? Hide? Or would that make her look guilty of something she didn't even understand? Her mind was a carousel of questions, none of which had answers. Somewhere blocks away, inside the dispatch center, the female operator tapped a confirmation into her system. On the map in front of her, a small digital icon blinked over a pinpoint labeled 325 Meadow Lane. Units were already on site. The call was active. Her training told her not to speculate. But she couldn't help to flicker her curiosity. What was happening at that address that had required such a swift response? Claire forced herself to take a steadying breath. She needed to see what was going on. She moved toward the gate at the side of the yard, fingers brushing the latch, but stopped just short of opening it. Through the gap, she could now see the white vehicle more clearly, an SUV with a dark stripe along the side. A police vehicle. The driver's side door was open, and an officer stood just outside it, speaking into a shoulder mic. He turned slightly, and even from here, she could read his posture, alert, cautious, ready. The radio on his vest crackled again. Medical on standby, confirming situation. Medical. The word twisted in her gut. Someone must be hurt. But who? She was the only one home. Unless... Her eyes darted to the house. What if someone was inside? Someone she didn't know about? The thought was absurd. She'd been outside most of the day, the house locked. But a small, cold part of her brain whispered, "How sure are you?" She turned toward the back door, taking 3 quick steps. Her bare feet slapped lightly against the tiles. Inside, the air was cooler, dimmer. Her living room looked exactly as she'd left it. Neat, quiet, still. But the stillness felt wrong now, too deep, like the quiet that follows a slammed door in a room you thought was empty. Her phone buzzed suddenly in her hand, making her jump. She looked down, unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello. Ma'am, this is Officer Daniels with the City Police Department. Are you currently at 325 Meadow Lane?" Her mouth went dry. Yes, yes, I am. What's going on? Ma'am, are you safe at this time? The question hit harder than she expected. I think so. Why? What's happening? There was a pause on the other end, filled only by the faint murmur of voices in the background. We received a call from this address reporting a possible medical emergency. We need to confirm if anyone in the residence requires immediate assistance. Claire shook her head instinctively, even though he couldn't see her. No, it's just me here. I'm fine. There's no emergency. Another pause. Ma'am, are you certain? The call came directly from your location. Her grip on the phone tightened. I'm telling you, I didn't call 911. Outside, she could hear footsteps on the gravel now. More than one set. The voice on the phone stayed calm, but firm. We're going to have officers check the property to ensure everything is secure. Please remain where you are. The line clicked off before she could argue. Claire stood frozen in the middle of her living room, her own address echoing in her head. The sunlight from the back door spilled across the floor, but it no longer felt warm. Her perfect afternoon had been dismantled in less than 5 minutes, and she still didn't know why. Her pulse was still hammering from the shock of hearing her address repeated over the police radio. For a moment, she stood frozen on the sun-warmed patio tiles, the bright light suddenly feeling too sharp, almost intrusive. Then instinct took over. She snatched her phone from the small table beside her lounge chair and fumbled to unlock it. The first number she dialed was Daniel's. He always answered, even in meetings. But this time, the call rang and rang, the tone filling her ears like a slow-building alarm. No answer. She ended the call and tried again. Still nothing. Her mind spun to the possibilities. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, a wrong address, a prank. But even as she tried to convince herself, she felt a prickling in her chest. That address was hers. There was no mistaking it. She switched to calling her neighbor, Mrs. Clark, whose kitchen window looked directly into her backyard. It rang twice before going to voicemail. Hey, it's me. I just heard something strange. Can you call me back? Please. Her voice cracked more than she wanted it to. Without realizing it, she was already walking toward the sliding glass door, the tiles cool beneath her bare feet now that she stepped out of sunlight. The interior of the house felt darker, quieter, too quiet. She paused in the living room and looked around. Nothing out of place. No broken glass. No movement. She dialed 911, her thumb pressing harder than necessary on the call icon. The operator's voice came through calm and practiced. 911, what's your emergency? Yes, hi. She began, her voice shaking. I just heard my address, 325 Meadow Lane, over a police radio. I don't know what's happening. Is there an emergency here? The operator hesitated. It was barely half a second, but it felt like a lifetime. Ma'am, are you safe right now? The question hit her like a slap. I think so, she said slowly. I'm in my house. Alone. What's going on? I'm going to need you to stay inside and keep your doors locked, the operator replied, her tone shifting from neutral to firm. Officers are already en route. Wait, why? What? But the line clicked and the call ended. She stared at the phone, stunned, her reflection faintly visible in the black screen. Locked doors. Stay inside. Officers on the way. That didn't sound like a false alarm. That sounded like danger. Heart pounding. She moved through each room, checking the locks. Front door, back door, even the laundry room that led to the garage. The metallic clicks of each lock seemed to echo in the silence. Between each check, she glanced out the windows. The street looked unchanged. A cyclist passed by. A car rolled lazily toward the stop sign. But every sound now felt amplified. A dog barking down the block, the faint hum of a lawnmower, the low whoosh of a passing truck. She dialed Daniel again, then her sister, then her neighbor on the other side, Mr. Keene. Each call was met with either voicemail or a ring that never ended. Her breathing quickened. It was as if the world had suddenly decided not to answer her. In her mind, the scene at the dispatch center played out without her ever having seen it. Operators exchanging glances, officers tightening their grip on radios, a map of the city glowing with tiny red icons. Somewhere, her address was lit up like a warning. She set her phone down on the kitchen counter for a moment, trying to steady herself. The cool granite under her hands grounded her, if only slightly. But then, a faint sound, a low thump from somewhere inside the house. Her head snapped toward the hallway. She picked up the phone again, this time holding it like a lifeline, and moved slowly toward the sound. Each step felt heavier, the floorboards creaking louder than they should. "Hello," she called, her voice low but urgent. No answer. She stopped at the edge of the hallway, her ears straining. The thump didn't come again, but the stillness that followed felt deliberate. She backed away, retreating toward the kitchen, her hands trembling. The logical part of her brain told her it was nothing, maybe the fridge settling or something shifting in the attic. But the part of her that had heard her own address over a 911 channel was screaming that it was something else. She returned to the sliding glass door and glanced out at the pool. The blue water shimmered under the sun, almost mocking her with its normalcy.